All right. Welcome to Inside the Grind podcast, the podcast for people building real coffee shops. Every episode, we sit down with someone who's deep in the day to day, hiring, fixing, worrying, making hard choices, and still showing up to serve. These are honest stories from founders in the thick of it. No fluff, no ego, just the real grind and what's getting them through. If you're building something on your blog, this one's for you. Brought to you by Coffee Futures Fund.
All right. Victoria, are you ready for your TEDx?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, you talk about an interesting segue as a ringmaster in a coffee shop. So, how about we go back to the beginning for your story, right? So, what was the spark? Tell me about the spark. Where did it all begin from?
So I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Mhm.
I had a business before this. I was in a consulting business drawing on managerial experience dating back to 1996. Dating myself a little bit there. I was the director of Georgetown University's procurement department. I helped the college board organize and maintain some digital filing information. I managed 400 communities in an online e-commerce program for Sunrise Senior Living. I have a lot of managerial experience. And I started a consulting business to sort of help management professionals across any industry herd the cats, right? You know, whether it's the digital information or the people that they're having trouble with. I was responsible for taking a project and just leading these managers through the projects and leading the people through the initiatives. And I had a potential client that asked me to meet with him, and he had a historic building here in downtown Winchester. And I said, you know, this building is normally close to the public. I would love to see it because I'm fascinated by things like that. He took me into the basement of this property, and in the basement of this property was a fully outfitted, ready to open coffee house. And it was completely shuttered and empty. It had an espresso machine on the bar. It had tables. It had chairs. It had coffee mugs. It had everything. And I said, what is going on here? I don't understand what I'm looking at. And he's like, yeah, you know, I thought I would open a coffee house and that would be cool and conversational and fun. And it would be open just by chance. And I thought it was not going to be very expensive, and all that was wrong. And, you know, at the time in my consulting business, I was about 10 years in, and I was kind of ready to find something else to do. I didn't like how isolating it is because I'm a people person. I love being around people. And I said, how much do you want for it? You know, I think I'd like to do this, knowing nothing about managing coffee. I drank a lot of coffee, but I didn't know anything about managing coffee. And he said, just, you know, I don't know, throw out a number. And I threw out a ridiculously low number of renting the space from him. And he said, yeah, and take all the equipment too. And I rented the space from him in the basement of the old post office in Winchester, Virginia, which is as dark and dank and unappealing as you could probably imagine it to be. And I turned it into this beautiful little community-oriented thing in Winchester, Virginia that was... Within 2 years, we were featured on the BBC television. Within 2 years, we were in magazines and newspapers all throughout the region, including even the Washington Post, all over the place. And after a little bit of time, we moved topside, as they say, out of the basement to our location on our Winchester's historic pedestrian walking mall there. So it really was a matter of being, I like to say that the universe put me there when I was supposed to be there. Yeah. And it helped me to find a business where I can be really engaged with people and involved in a lot of different projects, and where I can do a lot of good because I'm really interested in good. I'm a lifelong volunteer. I'm a former Rotarian. I have served on more boards than I can count at this point. And it's very easy to use my business for a community good. And that is a strong piece of the narrative of our progression through this time period to the point now where we've been open 10 years. So that's how it all started. I just walked into a space and I saw something valuable in that space. And I saw a place where I could do something that made a difference for myself and for my friends and for my community. And I've never looked back after that.
That is an amazing story. I have known you for several months now, and we have talked so much and never knew all the details about the story. That's awesome. That's so cool. So Victoria, if I may ask, when you think back today, right, to that moment, why do you think you said yes? What was going through your mind? Because you had no experience about coffee at all, right? And possibly you never thought about actually managing a coffee shop. So what was in that moment? What happened? What went through your mind? Maybe some questions, but also some excitement. Of course, that's why you said yes. So when you look back today, why did you say yes?
Well, I'll tell you, and I suspect that this is a similar thing in the hearts of most people who start a business like this is I am not risk adverse. You cannot be risk adverse and be successful in this business. I'm going to say that again. You cannot be risk adverse and be successful in this business. You have to jump into every step of the project, every year, every new product with both feet. You just have to jump in and be ready to pass fail. There is no C's getting degrees when it comes to managing in coffee. It is a pass-fail experiment. And that is me. If I have even a tiny little inkling that I want to do something, I do it 100%. I have no concept whatsoever that failure is possible because it isn't. I will put in whatever amount of work is possible to make it a success. And that is why I didn't say no, because I know that if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. If I want to do something, I will let nothing stand in my way of doing it. At the time when I had started this business, I had already had a stroke and had gotten out of the hospital and was told I would probably not be able to go back to work again. And after my stroke, I went back to work. I continued to take on clients and continued to do exactly what I wanted to do. And there isn't a doctor, there isn't a hospital, there isn't a medical diagnosis, there isn't a politician, there isn't a person that is going to tell me I am not going to achieve something that I'm setting up my mind to do. And I suspect that there is a seed of that in the heart of every single entrepreneur that we're going to connect with and every single entrepreneur that we will come across in coffee is there is a seed of, if I really want to achieve this, I cannot fail. And I think that it really comes down to working through every single problem, working through every single naysayer, because there is an awful lot of naysayers around you when you say you're building something, and just saying, I believe in myself enough to commit that in this pass-fail experiment, I am going to pass, period. That's me. I'm going to do it and I'm going to pursue it 100%.
Yeah. Wow. That gave me so much energy. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm listening to you right now, and that's what you need every single day. Yeah, right. I mean, reminding yourself, yes, it's a problem to be solved. You're doing it for the right reasons, and then just one step at a time, one day at a time, just, however complex it is, but it's a problem that can be solved. It's not impossible. So you just stay focused and give it your best shot. I love that.
Definitely.
So, that's interesting. And you also talked about how for each and every entrepreneur, that's true, that drive, that inherent motivation to do something good, to solve a problem. And I know you speak with so many aspiring coffee shop owners, emerging coffee shop owners. How do you tell them to really balance this, right? So it's one thing to really have that motivation and that sincerity in your head to go after it. That's all emotions which really drives you. But at the end of the day, you have to bring it back to the ground where you maybe don't have a lot of knowledge. Maybe you have a lot of knowledge. There are so many resources, like you said, herding, and not just people, it's resources as well, right? As an entrepreneur, you're solving not just one problem, but 100 problems every single day. So how do people stay balanced in that scenario on a given day, every single day? What do you tell them to balance, the thought and the action?
So it's interesting is that because we're so well known regionally, we do have a lot of people who come in and say, I want to own a coffee house. I mean, I see the faces of at least 10 humans that have come in 10 years and have told me this. And sometimes they don't phrase it as a coffee house because we're a little bit of a hybrid. We have coffee in the morning. We have cocktails at nighttime. So sometimes they're like, I want to do exactly what you're doing. I want to own a bar. I want to own, insert whatever in food and beverage. And the first thing I tell them is, no, you don't. Because I want to know how sincere they are. No, you don't. You don't really. What you think you want is this idea that you're going to be behind a counter someplace with a cup of coffee, talking to customers and making new friends, and you'll have a rag in your hand and you'll be wiping the counter and everything is so casual and it's like friends and, and at the end of the day, you're counting your money, and it's this vision that is not reality. This is a grind, no pun intended. When you started out asking about how everything is on fire, something is on fire every single day. And occasionally it's actually the restaurant. There is a piece of equipment actually on fire. There's something to do every single day. And so the first thing that I do is when they tell me I want to open this place, I say, I don't think you do. Let me ask you, what do you think it's like? And I dig into that kind of experience of what is it they actually want to do. And, I have talked some people out of it because, I don't think they're ready for that pass-fail experiment. And I think that their idea is somewhere in the middle. I'll make enough money to get by. I'll have enough time to do it all. And, I'm using my retirement. I'm burning my retirement fund or whatever it is. So I think that the benefit that I offer to those folks that come in and ask me questions is I'm really going to give them reality. I'm going to say, this is what my day looks like. And this is the problems that you're going to look at. And these are the considerations and the key competencies that you have to have in order to make this successful. And if you can't check those boxes, then you're really going to struggle and it's going to impact you personally and the relationships around you. And you're not really going to be able to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. However, if you are ready for the pass-fail experiment, if in your heart you know that you have that hustle, you have that grind, you have a capacity to consistently chase a better day every single day, then this is the greatest job in the world. It is, and when I say it's a pass-fail experiment, I mean exactly that. If you're a person who can wake up in the morning and say, man, I'm really tired, but I have to get up and I have to do payroll, I have to order beans, I have to fill out health department paperwork, I have to potentially let go of an employee who's underperforming, I have to deal with the new sign permit on the sidewalk that they're asking for $10 a year for, whatever it is. And I have to learn how to do all that because there's no textbook. When you turn that key in the door for the first time, there's no textbook, right? This is part of what we're trying to figure out in the Coffee Futures Fund is that there's no textbook that's helping you to be successful. And you have to be able to constantly look in yourself for that motivation and look outside of yourself for resources to help you be successful. And that piece is what's critical. You don't have to know everything. Going back to your question is, how do you motivate these people every single day? You don't have to know everything, and you don't have to know how to ground yourself and center yourself and to be able to handle those pressures either. But you have to know where to find the information to do that. You have to know what resources are at your disposal to be able to figure out how to move past whatever the problem is. And yes, one of the problems that you will have in that period of opening is motivation. Everyone does, because you're exhausted and you're hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall that is going to feel so unnecessary for progress. And you have to be able to say, okay, how do I get that motivation back? Is it going fishing? Is it going to have coffee with a neighbor? Is it going to church? Is it volunteering? Whatever it is, you have to find what helps to ground you and get you back to who you are as a person, separate and independent of the business that you're starting. And that is something that everyone who is just starting out on this journey really needs to think about. What are the things that you can do to relieve that stress, relieve that pressure, and to ground you as a person that is separate from this massive business project that you're working on and working through?
Interesting. So essentially finding something that fills your cup so that you are able to draw that motivation and then take it one day at a time to solve, problems or find answers to the problems.
Yeah, it is really critical to, I'm a planner. So I remember when I started this business, I had this huge document that was essentially, this is what we're going to do in the first 90 days, the first 365 days and X, Y, and Z. And I got halfway through that and realized I didn't know anything about how to start this. And all of those expectations were kind of out the window because the reality is every day is a new problem. And they're so unexpected. It's just things that you don't, if you decide I want to put a separate, in my current building, you want to put in a separate walkway so that you have a circular floor plan. And the walkway is 4 feet. You're just opening up that wall. You're opening up a wall 4 feet. Well, suddenly you've started a renovation. You have to have a permit for that. It has to be approved according to the planning office. And 20% of any renovation that you do in your space has to be committing funds, 20% of those funds, to making the space ADA accessible in the United States. So these little tiny problems. So then you go to get your permit and they say, how much is this going to cost? $1,000? Okay, 20% of that $1,000 has to be going to do something that makes the space more accessible for persons in wheelchairs. So there's these little tiny things that you don't know anything about when you start and no one tells you about. And then suddenly you have a new problem. In my space, it's very, very complicated. The foundation of my building was laid by friends of George Washington. This is an extremely complicated space to retrofit. So, you start thinking creatively for how to meet those briefs and creatively for how to solve those problems. And, it ends up taking you another 4 months. It ended up costing me another $35,000 just to put in $1,000 doorway because it delayed my project for that amount of time because someone swung a hammer. You know what I mean? It is, it's really tricky. And I think that taking it every single day, day by day, is really the best way to do it. You can have this beautiful project plan, but you have to have flexibility for check-ins to make adjustments that are going to move things around every day, every single day, at least week by week, but probably every day, to be realistic.
That's interesting.
That's it for this episode of Inside the Grind. If something here helped, make sure to subscribe and pass it to another coffee shop or a friend. We all need each other more than we admit. To learn more or join the community, head to coffeefutures.fun. This movement is just getting started. Until next time, keep growing. Your shop matters more than you know.